There is something terrifying, not to man, but to darkness itself, about a woman who has learned the power of silence. She is not silent because she lacks words. No, she is silent because her spirit has matured. She no longer throws pearls before swine. She no longer wastes breath on those who refuse to hear. She has found a deeper language, the language of purpose. When a woman chooses silence, she has not surrendered. She has separated. She has decided that not every battle is worthy of her voice. Her silence is not absence. It is alignment. Her silence is not void. It is volume in another realm. You see, there is a time to speak and a time to be still. And when a woman discerns that divine timing, her silence becomes prophetic. The enemy fears a silent woman because she is no longer predictable. She no longer reacts from pain. She responds from power. When she stops talking, she starts listening to God, to wisdom, to the whispers of destiny. That silence becomes her strategy. That quiet becomes her weapon. She no longer needs to convince anyone. She no longer needs to defend herself. She lets fruit speak. She lets her transformation be her testimony. When she goes quiet, she is building. When she is silent, she is birthing. You don't disturb a woman in labor, and the woman who chooses silence is in labor with purpose, vision, and destiny. Many misunderstand her. They think she's broken. But silence is not a sign of brokenness. It is a sign of becoming. She has grown weary of noise and now craves clarity. She knows that too many voices drown out the voice of God. So she silences the world to hear heaven. Let me tell you something. The woman who can govern her mouth has already conquered half her life. The woman who refuses to respond to every insult, every betrayal, every distraction, she has already chosen to rise. Her silence is not retreat. It is refinement. It is in that silence that God gives her her strategies. It is in that silence that healing takes root. It is in that silence that identity becomes unshakable. When a woman chooses silence, she no longer plays by the rules of chaos. She governs herself by the laws of the kingdom. She doesn't chase. She doesn't beg. She doesn't prove. She positions. She prays. She prepares. And when she does speak again, when she opens her mouth, it will not be to argue. It will be to announce. It will be to declare. It will be to shift atmospheres. You see, she's not dangerous because she's loud. She's dangerous because she's aligned. She has chosen the higher road. She has chosen the deeper well. And that silence, it is sacred. It is powerful. It is divine. Silence is not weakness. It's strategic power. In a world where noise is often mistaken for strength, the one who chooses silence is often misunderstood. But silence, when chosen with intention, becomes a powerful force. It is not the absence of voice, it is the presence of control. It is the discipline to speak only when words are necessary and the wisdom to know when they are not. Silence is not a retreat from confrontation. It is a positioning for clarity. While others are busy proving points, a silent person is discerning the times, studying the terrain, and preparing a response that carries weight. Strategic silence is a sign of mastery. It shows that a person is no longer governed by emotions, but by purpose. They have learned that shouting doesn't equal authority, and constant reaction doesn't mean relevance. There is power in not allowing external chaos to dictate internal peace. In silence, there is listening. And in listening, there is learning. Silence allows space for divine instruction, for inner reflection, and for alignment with truth. It is in silence that one gains the upper hand, not by overpowering, but by outlasting. Those who use silence as strategy understand timing. They know that premature speech can sabotage what patience would have perfected. They realize that not every confrontation deserves a response, and not every battle requires their presence. Sometimes silence is the loudest statement a person can make, especially when it disrupts the expectations of those who thrive on drama and attention. In silence, strength is refined, dignity is preserved, and influence is cultivated. It becomes clear that the most powerful voices are not always the loudest. They are often the quietest, waiting for the right moment to speak, and when they do, everything changes. A silent woman is not empty. She is full of discernment and divine insight. Her silence is not a void, but a vessel deep, sacred, and rich with revelation. She does not speak often, not because she has nothing to say, but because she has learned the value of timing, the weight of words, and the wisdom of restraint. Her quietness is not confusion, it is clarity. She sees beyond what is said, hears beyond what is spoken, and senses what others miss entirely. In her stillness, she is gathering knowledge, filtering truth from noise, and allowing God to whisper secrets to her spirit. She walks into a room and doesn't need to announce her presence because discernment speaks louder than volume. Her eyes are observant, her spirit alert. While others rush to be heard, she listens. While others react, she reflects. Her insight does not come from books alone, but from deep communion with the Holy Spirit. She has tasted the bitterness of betrayal and the silence of heaven, and from both she has drawn wisdom. Her stillness is not fear, it is reverence for herself, for her purpose, and for the one who guides her steps. She doesn't engage in every argument because she discerns which battles matter. She doesn't explain herself to everyone because she knows her identity is not up for debate. Her silence unsettles the proud, empowers the humble, and opens the way for divine direction. She is not passive, she is prophetic. She is not disconnected, she is deeply aligned. And while others may underestimate her silence, heaven responds to it. Because when a woman walks in discernment and divine insight, her very presence carries authority, even if not a single word is spoken. Silence is a womb. What grows in silence shakes the world. It is in the hidden place, the quiet place, that the most powerful things are conceived. Just as a child is formed in the secrecy of the womb, so are visions, ideas, revelations, and callings developed in the silence of the soul. A woman who chooses silence is not idle. She is incubating. She is nurturing something sacred, something not yet ready for the public eye. The world may not see the process, but heaven is watching the preparation. Silence becomes the environment where destiny matures. It is the atmosphere where the noise of opinion, distraction, and pressure is shut out so that the voice of purpose can be heard clearly. In silence, the woman receives clarity. She identifies what is real and what is temporary. She becomes deeply connected to her source, God who speaks the loudest in stillness. What she carries in her silence is not small, it is weighty. It has the potential to alter lives, to shift cultures, to break generational cycles. The womb of silence is uncomfortable. It is often misunderstood and sometimes even mocked. But the woman who understands its power does not rush the process. She allows growth to happen in secret, trusting that what is forming in her will one day be revealed in strength and glory. And when the time comes, what emerges from her silence will not be ordinary. It will be a force. It will shake assumptions, challenge systems, and reveal the wisdom of waiting. Because what grows in silence cannot be touched by noise. It is protected. It is divine. And when it arrives, the world will know it came from a sacred place that cannot be replicated, only respected. When a woman stops explaining, she starts elevating There comes a moment in a journey when she realizes that her worth is not found in others' understanding. She no longer feels the need to justify her decisions, her silence, her growth, or her standards. She stops trying to convince people who are committed to misunderstanding her. That moment when she withdraws from the exhausting cycle of explaining is the moment she begins to rise. Explanation can often become entrapment. It keeps her tied to people, places, and patterns that no longer align with her destiny. But when she lets go of the need to be approved, she makes room to be appointed. Her silence is not avoidance, it is advancement. She is not stepping back, she is stepping up. She has chosen to ascend to places where noise cannot go and where validation is not required. She understands that elevation often demands separation. As she stops explaining, her actions begin to speak. Her fruit becomes her answer. Her peace becomes her evidence. She learns that elevation doesn't come from being understood by man. It comes from being aligned with God. And the more she aligns, the less she explains. She begins to move in purpose with boldness, grace, and clarity, knowing that her obedience will open doors that approval never could. She no longer carries the burden of making everyone comfortable with her growth. Instead, she carries the call of something greater. She understands now that eagles don't explain how they fly. They just fly. And so she rises not with noise, but with focus. She rises because she has outgrown the ground and embraced the sky. And in that elevation, she finds freedom, not in being heard, but in being whole. Silence allows God to speak louder than emotions. In the stillness, when the noise of anger, fear, disappointment, and confusion is quieted, the voice of God rises above it all. A woman who chooses silence is not ignoring her emotions. She is surrendering them. She understands that emotions, while real, are not always reliable. They can be loud, urgent, and persuasive, but they are not always true. Silence becomes her act of trust, a sacred pause that says, God, I want your voice more than I want to react. In that quiet place, emotions begin to settle. The heart, once turbulent, finds peace, and it is there in that inner stillness that God begins to whisper direction, comfort, and clarity. He does not shout over chaos. He waits for silence, and the woman who has learned to quiet her soul hears what others miss. She gains insight not rooted in impulse, but in divine wisdom. She no longer makes decisions based on how she feels, but on what God reveals. This kind of silence is not repression. It is reverence. It is choosing to be still long enough for heaven to realign the heart. It is allowing the Holy Spirit to interpret what the emotions cannot explain. In silence, tears become prayers, and unspoken pain becomes a doorway to healing. Emotions may rise and fall, but God's voice remains constant. And the woman who chooses to listen rather than lash out discovers that divine instruction always leads to peace. She becomes unshaken, not because she feels nothing, but because she has learned to trust what God says above what she feels. Her silence is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the sacred space where her spirit surrenders and God's presence becomes louder than her pain. The quiet woman often becomes the most impactful. Her influence is not found in how much she speaks, but in the weight of her presence. She may not demand the spotlight, but when she walks into a room, the atmosphere shifts. Her words are few, but they are full. When she speaks, people listen not because she is loud, but because she carries depth. Her silence is not absence. It is evidence of inner substance. She has nothing to prove, and that confidence draws attention without effort. This kind of woman leads with stillness. She doesn't need to outtalk anyone because her life speaks louder than any speech. Her consistency, her integrity, her strength under pressure, those are the things that make her unforgettable. She doesn't interrupt conversations to insert herself. Instead, her presence becomes the wisdom others seek when the noise dies down. She doesn't rush to give answers because she has learned to sit with questions, to listen deeply, and to respond with discernment. The quiet woman doesn't chase visibility. She understands that true influence is not built through noise, but through truth. And so she becomes a safe space, a wise voice, a steady hand. People may overlook her at first, but they always come back to her. They come back when the crowd's excitement fades, when they need direction, when life demands something deeper than applause. That's when her impact is felt the most. She is quiet, not because she has less to offer, but because she has more to carry. Her silence is not emptiness, it is preparation. It is focus. It is strength refined in private. And in the end, it is often this quiet woman whose legacy lasts the longest, whose influence runs the deepest, and whose voice, though soft, echoes through generations. Hell trembles when a woman stops reacting and starts responding through purpose. The enemy is not afraid of noise. He is afraid of clarity. He is not threatened by emotional outbursts, but he fears a woman who has found her assignment when she stops being moved by every insult, every betrayal, every delay, and instead begins to respond with intentionality, discipline, and divine focus. She becomes unstoppable. Her emotions no longer dictate her direction. Her purpose does. A reacting woman can be manipulated, but a responding woman is unshakable. Reaction is rooted in impulse. Response is rooted in identity. And when a woman discovers who she truly is, she no longer fights every battle. She chooses which ones to conquer. She knows her time is sacred, her energy is valuable, and her mind is not a playground for confusion. She doesn't let distractions pull her out of position. She has seen too much, heard too much, and survived too much to waste time on things that don't carry eternal weight. The devil fears that kind of woman, the one who prays instead of panics, who worships instead of worries, who plans instead of pouts. Because every time she chooses purpose over reaction, she silences the schemes of darkness. Her posture becomes warfare. Her patience becomes a weapon. Her obedience becomes an earthquake in the enemy's camp. She is not just enduring, she is executing heaven's agenda. She doesn't just walk away from foolishness, she walks into her calling. She speaks only when led, moves only when sent, and builds only what God has assigned. And that's why hell trembles. Because when a woman stops reacting and starts responding, she becomes a force no demon can distract, no lie can derail, and no circumstance can defeat. She is no longer driven by feelings, she is led by fire. So hear this clearly, when a woman chooses silence, she is not shrinking, she is sharpening. She is stepping into a realm where her voice is no longer used for defense, but for destiny. She is no longer ruled by the noise around her, but governed by the truth within her. Her silence is not her absence, it is her ascension. And when she rises with wisdom, with power, with clarity, and with heaven backing her every step. Because the most dangerous woman is not the one who shouts to be heard. It is the one who has learned that when God speaks through her silence, the world has no choice but to listen.